Joining us now in a Fox Business exclusive, the lead attorney for the Canadian trucker protests. He is Keith Wilson, along with the former premier of Newfoundland. He's Brian Peckford. Hey, it's great to have you gentlemen both on. It's good to see you both. First to you, Mr. Wilson, the blockade at the border, a second U.S. to Canada crossing blocked by truckers protesting mandates. This is the Alberta with Montana crossing, the Ambassador Bridge between Ontario and Detroit blocked. Mr. Wilson, the Prime Minister Trudeau says the protesters are fringe extremists, racists, and Nazis. What do you say?
It's troubling that the Prime Minister of our country is now characterizing hard-working Canadians who during COVID delivered food and critical supplies and put themselves at risk to whatever risk it posed. And now suddenly for political opportunism, he's characterizing these hardworking truckers who are trying to protect their charter rights, who are trying to ensure that they're not discriminated against and have freedom of choice, as somehow being a fringe element. I think Canadians took offense to it. And as you've seen across our country, this was a spontaneous event. This was not organized. These events that are occurring at various borders are not coordinated by any operations center. This is Canadians saying we've had enough, government overreach has gone too far, and we need our fundamental rights back, and it needs to stop now.
Yeah, Mr. Peckford, to Mr. Wilson's point, it's great to have you on. The truckers are in it for the long haul. They're not going to stop until the mandates are lifted. Now, 2 Canadian provinces are dropping pandemic mandates, Alberta and Saskatchewan, and truckers have sparked protest movements worldwide, in the U.S., in Alaska, and possibly from California to Washington. What's your take on what's happening, sir?
I think this is a real test for our Charter of Rights and Freedoms, which is only 40 years old, where your Bill of Rights is over 200 years old. And this is the first real test of whether written individual rights and freedoms really mean something in this country. And I think citizens are beginning to realize that they have a precious, precious thing in the Constitution right now, and that's their Charter of Rights and Freedoms. And now we see manifested through the truckers and other individuals just how important they know these kinds of rights are for our democracy. So I think this is a super test, the first real test we've had about the Charter, which I helped create.
Interesting what Mr. Peckford just said, Mr. Wilson. You know, the Premier of Alberta tweeting out criticism of Justin Trudeau, saying people now can live safely with the COVID-19 pandemic without the need for damaging government interventions, that you can have therapeutics and vaccines and do it of your own volition, saying the worst of the Omicron surge is over. But, sir, there's also outrage. A 78-year-old man wrestled to the ground, handcuffed. He was honking his car horn in support of the Freedom truckers. What do you make of this? People are really angry about these images now on our screen.
Well, it could get much worse. I'm speaking to you from downtown Ottawa in the heart of the protest. And outside this hotel right now, there are several hundred police. We're looking at over 2,000 coming in tonight. And the police have indicated that they may do a raid and round everybody up and arrest them and then start trying to move the trucks away. And I hope it doesn't come to that, but I need to emphasize it's an extremely dangerous, volatile situation. We're anticipating that if the police are going to make a raid and try and arrest the thousands of truckers and their supporters who are here, that it will either happen tonight or tomorrow night. And I've said to the police, the world is watching. This is not how we resolve disputes. This dispute requires a political resolution. We were in court on an injunction application in the Superior Court in this province earlier this week, and a very senior judge in that case made it absolutely clear to everyone that the truckers here have the right of peaceful protest, and that's what's happening. But the police and the political response so far has been to threaten to use force.
Wait, hang on. Sorry, sir. So is Justin Trudeau behind that? Using police force to break up the protest. By the way, it's only like 10% of the truck drivers are unvaccinated, right? So, and they're saying we don't want to have to quarantine, you know, when we cross the border from the U.S. into Canada, and it's hurting our livelihoods. Is Justin Trudeau behind a potential pushback tonight that you say could be coming, with the police stepping in and breaking up what's going on with the trucker protests?
Well, there's 2 ways he can be. One is that he holds the keys to resolve this. He's the one who caused these restrictions and breaches of charter rights. He can lift them immediately. It's an amendment to an order that can be signed by a letter of one of his ministers. So he has the ability to diffuse this and resolve it and follow the leads of other countries in Europe and elsewhere in the provinces. And it seems pretty obvious to any seasoned observers here that the Prime Minister is clearly putting pressure on the various police forces. He's been vilifying these hardworking people. He's come out and called them publicly more than once racist, misogynist, and he's also said, do we tolerate these people? Is that the language of a modern leader in a democratic country?
Yeah, we hear you. And Mr. Peckford, to Mr. Wilson's point, you know, he's basically dividing, he's belittling, he's not uniting, he's rejecting all calls to sit down and talk with the truckers. He's not doing that. That's not leadership. No. Let's listen. By the way, Mr. Peckford, react to that, and then I'm going to have you both respond to what Justin Trudeau is saying on camera. Okay, go ahead, Mr. Peckford.
Yes, this is very, very provocative by the leader of a democratic country, as Mr. Wilson has said. And it's really ironic that it was his father with me and 8 other first ministers who crafted the Charter of Rights and Freedoms only 4 years ago, which provided for the very thing he's trying to violate now. It is a real tragic national irony, and one that I'm sure is not lost on a lot of people in both countries.
We hear you, Mr. Peckford. Let's listen to the White House press secretary saying, you know, she's saying that the White House supports freedom of protest, but downplaying the protests as, quote, sporadic traffic jams. Let's listen to the Prime Minister Trudeau also threaten, if you don't have mandates, you're going to have more restrictions. Watch this.
I know there's been some suggestion, not by reporters necessarily at all, but that this congestion is related to the vaccine requirements. It's not. I mean, I'm saying I'm going to get to the protests, but the protests going on across Canada, which have spread to a bridge, are leading to sporadic congestion and blockages.
I can understand frustrations with mandates, but mandates are the way to avoid further restrictions or having to be restricted.
Your response to what Mr. Trudeau, the Prime Minister, said, Mr. Wilson?
Well, it's ridiculous. You know, it's all overblown, but it's highly consequential. These mandates have tremendous damage to our children, to our economy, and why the Prime Minister is seeking to sow division and prolonging these unnecessary restrictions on our rights and freedoms, I just don't understand. I hope he changes course, and if he's not, that his party turns on him.
Mr. Peckford, final word.
Yeah, no, it's unbelievable that a leader, and our leader in this case in Canada, would make such statements about mandates and how important they are, when study after study now has shown that the cure is worse than the disease. So he's on the wrong side of science, and he's on the wrong side of history.
Keith Wilson, Brian Peckford, thanks for joining us, gentlemen. It's great to have you on. We'll get you back on again soon. It's good to see you.